Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Claddercast episode 103. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
And I'm Rory Summers.
We are, of course, missing a Sid and a John this week. We are missing a Sid because he's up with his parents up in Scotland, so he doesn't have access to any recording gear. And we're missing John because he has broken his microphone, and I thought John was waiting for a replacement, which is not the whole truth. He's waiting to post the microphone away to be replaced and repaired. Then he'll have to wait again for it to be sent back to him.
Oh dear.
I feel that pain. I've got a pair of cycling shorts that have been sat in the back of the car in a bag, ready to post back to wherever for about 3 months now. All I need to do is drive to a post office, and I just haven't done it.
But are they used? Because if they're used, they must be pretty fruity.
No. Although, to be honest, when I got them, they were too big. But since then, I've put on a bit of extra padding, so they might fit now.
Do you know, send them back. Problem goes away. Done.
Yeah.
But then the problem is that I'm going to wear them when I'm cycling, which means the padding will drop off and they'll be too big.
The moral of this story, ladies and gentlemen, is don't exercise.
I return you to the 5 donuts.
There you go, you see.
Hey! Yeah. So I do apologise if my audio is a bit off today because I've moved room. So I was in the small spare room was my office and games hut hole, and I've moved into a larger room, which means I've got more space, which means unfortunately I can't put the anti-echo stuff directly behind me, which I could do in the past. So it's a bigger room, so it probably echoes and horribly. It's all hissing and horrible right now, and I won't know this until I edit it. I thought I was being really clever as well, so what I did is I put an extra 5x5 Kallax, and thought I can now fit in all the games that were on those 2 Billy bookcases and on all over the floor into the Kallaxes. I was wrong.
Yeah.
Well, mistakes made.
Mistakes were made. Well, the first mistake is I actually think, in hindsight, a Billy bookcase from IKEA may be a better storage option than a Kallax. I think it actually has more storage space.
Whoa.
Second, I didn't realise how many board games were actually on the floor in my room.
You couldn't see all the board games because of all the board games.
That is exactly correct. I had a stack about 1 metre high under my desk, and I had a stack as tall as me next to one of the bookcases.
And you're not a short chap either, are you, Steve?
No, I'm not.
No, you clear 6 foot, don't you?
Yeah, I'm almost bang on 6 feet, so yeah.
Good Lord.
Yes, so I will be selling about 50% of my games collection over the coming months.
Well, get in quick, folks. Buy all the shite Steve doesn't like. I mean, all of these really high-quality board games. Speaking of which, I need to do the same.
There's a high proportion of shite, I must admit. There are a couple of games I've gone, shall I keep that? Shall I put it on the sell pile? Let's see if it'll fit in the shelves first. And there are other games that go, no, why have I got this? Why have I held on to this? This will never get played.
Yeah.
Yes, that's rubbish. Did you do a game count?
I didn't, but I realised I was using the my game collection on Board Game Geek as a way of kind of keeping tabs of things when I was putting them in, so I could try and put them in some vague alphabetical order. And the amount of times I pick up a game and go, well, that's not on the Board Game Geek app, so I need to add that as well. So I thought I had 230 games. It ended up I had 260.
Wow. Okay. So
Nice
you still
job.
have the most of all of us then.
Not for long, I don't think.
Not when you've cleared them out now. Because if you've got 260, I've got 233 according to my app.
Ooh.
And 160 expansions. That's a lot. Although, to be fair, about 20 of them are Cards Against Humanity. But anyway.
Well, yeah.
But yes, we both need a cull.
And I got to admit as well, the scourge of the modern board game collector is the Kickstarter all-in box.
Yeah.
Because it may be cool to have all this stuff, but I've got 4 FFG normal boxes on 1 Kallax cube. So that's 4 different games, which would have kept me entertained for weeks on end. Now that Kallax cube is taken up by 1 copy of Anachrony, or 1 copy of Ankh, or 1 copy of Rising Sun.
Yeah. I've got Nemesises like that. That takes up
Nemesis
more than a cube, actually. Lords of Hellas takes up 2 cubes.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. Tainted Grail isn't even in the cubes. It's on the top because it would take up 2 cubes.
Yeah.
It's just mental.
Maybe that's how they should start measuring Kickstarter backing rewards. You know, how many rewards are you going to get?
cubes.
This is a 2 cube. This is a 2
It's a
cube package.
two-cuber.
Yeah.
Well, did you see how one of the things that the new Descent has just come out? So it's not quite Descent 3rd edition. It's kind of like Descent 2.5, which is the big like miniature dungeon crawling game from Fantasy Flight, which is eye-wateringly expensive. I think the RRP is like £175, but they've demonstrated that the box is effectively one Kallax cube. It just fits snugly into a Kallax cube, and that's it.
They did that with the trove chest for Too Many Bones. That big sort of big MDF wooden chest thing with the magnetic drawers. That fits perfectly into a Kallax cube as well. It's almost like these people know their market.
Can you open it and access the drawers?
Yes, because they
from
slide
inside
out.
the Kallax cube.
Yes.
I thought
yes,
don't
you
you
can.
need to use both sides of the cube though, or is everything one access point?
It depends on which set of Kallaxes I'm using, because I've got mine organised like a library. So one of them you can access two sides, and the other two, one's against the wall and the other one's kind of not next to a wall but close enough. There's a lot of shite behind it that you never need to. So yes and no.
Okay.
But the trove chest you don't need to get to the back of. You just literally slide the lid off, so slide the front off. And the drawers just open up, so it doesn't need to leave the cube. It's really
Nice.
good.
Okay.
It's very fancy.
Right then, Rory, you're running the game today because I popped onto the computer early to try and hunt down some news. I come onto the spreadsheet and there's like 20 news items you've put
There's
on.
not 20 news items, right? There's maybe 6 tops.
That's a lot.
Or 7. Okay, but I'm just saying, right, okay, so...
Bit of scope creep there.
So, first one, then, is that the games and puzzle market is set to exceed $13 billion of value in 2022, which is nice.
Is that like a single Kickstarter by Simon? Or,
Yes, the new Simon Kickstarter due out end of this year.
Kingdom Death Monster 2 has been announced.
Yeah. It will come with 247,000 miniatures.
No, basically, lockdown, everyone's getting bored and people have got extra cash, have been spending it. More people have been coming into the hobby. So this is puzzles, your classic jigsaws as well, board games, card games, RPGs. Yeah, it's jumped up quite a bit. And yeah, they're blaming lockdown for it. So
That's a
all good.
10% increase.
Yeah, it was over 11.7 billion in 2020. So it's they're calling it a result of digital fatigue. True story.
I can understand that.
People
yeah.
are bored of shit video games, and there's a lot of them about.
And Netflix and stuff.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's sitting in your computer all day, isn't it? It's because I've got this problem. I now sit at my computer at home all day, so I don't play video games on my PC in the evening anymore because, well, I've already made a massive arse imprint on my seat. I need to let it rest for a few hours.
Yeah, it's good to get away from the screen.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know what the percentages are for the different kind of aspects. How much that is board games, card games, how much of it's RPGs. I'd love to know what the values and differences between, say, miniatures games and board games are, because I would love to know what business is actually big. Because most shops and retailers do tend to say that Games Workshop and Pokemon cards and Magic cards are basically the biggest money spinner. But I'd love to see some actual figures from industry which kind of back that up or give a bit more of an insight on it.
We should get some of those figures towards the end of the year, beginning of next. I forget which website it is that normally does a full breakdown. But I'll keep an eye out for it, Steve, for you.
I'd be interested to see, because you mentioned RPGs there, Steve. I would be interested to see the growth in things like Tabletop Simulator and things like Roll20 as well. I know they're obviously digital platforms, but they're not Netflix. So a lot of I'd be, because obviously, we've played a lot more RPGs than we used to because of being in lockdown. It's pretty much been our sort of sanity saver. So I just wonder what the increase on those kind of platforms would be as well.
Maybe we should ask them. There's only so many companies. It might just be worth an email to their marketing department to get some information on that. What their sales increase, subscriber increase has been over the last 18 months. They can only completely ignore me. So
Place bets now.
let's see what I can rustle up for the next episode. Already giving myself homework. Well, you mentioned Games Workshop there, Steve. And interesting, the next story is Games Workshop related, is that because of the stupid amount of money they've made over the last year, where their sales are up by a third to £361 million and whatnot. So they're handing out a £5,000 bonus to every worker across their entire business. That's shop workers, model makers, and a lot. Every single one of them is getting a £5,000 bonus just because. And then the managers getting even more.
That's quite good.
I would love a £5,000 bonus for just doing my job. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, actually, because I've heard a bit of backlash against this one as well. Yeah, because there's been it's the kind of backlash along the lines of, well, you weren't paying your shop staff much to begin with, so in the grand scheme of things, £5,000 extra is kind of what you should have been paying them to begin with.
Brings them back to parity.
Yeah, and there was one. There was a guy who used to design games for Games Workshop on Twitter about this, and I think he actually started talking about this before this announcement got made, and he. Did he do the Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, I think? And he was quite open and basically described what he was getting paid for it. And I was surprised how little it was. And one of his gripes was, like, he didn't even get a copy of the game.
Whoa.
He had to go out and buy his own copy of his own game. Which was a bit kind of like, yeah.
Jeez.
Allegedly.
I was about to say, apparently allegedly there, lest we are contacted by a number of lawyer-based enterprises.
Games Workshop wouldn't do that to us, would they?
Oh, I don't know.
Next story then is, and I don't know why, but Rome Total War, for some reason, has floated up in lots of conversations I've had over the last few weeks. So I was really quite excited to find out that PSC Games are doing a board game adaptation of it. And I don't know, were we talking about Rome Total War recently? Or am I...
I vaguely remember something being mentioned a few casts ago, but I honestly couldn't tell you who said it and when. But then again, I can barely remember what I had for breakfast this morning. So remembering 3 podcasts ago, it's asking far too much of me. I wonder do you know what format it'll take? It sounds to me, I mean, having played some of the Total War games, I never played Rome, I played Shogun and I think one of the others. They're obviously fairly large scale things. Yeah. So I would have thought that this would be more of like a tabletop battle game.
From the sounds of it, it sounds a bit 4X-y. So it is, you've still got your tech trees, so you're still trying to advance and develop your troops and your buildings, whatnot, expand. But the principle is just grow your army and your culture and just go kick ass.
Nice, okay.
But
I do love the little sound blurb here. The game can be played, the base game can be played in under 3 hours, but can be extended further with expansions.
Oh, Jesus. I'm not sure if that's a token in its favour or not. I mean, it sounds like my kind of weight, I'm not going to lie to you. But I've never seen board games advertising themselves when it's around 3 hours.
As a plus sign, yeah, you can play under 3. And another one, really quickly then, is that Niroshima Hex, and the only reason I bring this up, because we were talking about it in episode 100, it's coming back to the digital app market as a... But it's not a version 2, it's a completely new game.
All right, okay.
Yeah, so if you've got Niroshima Hex on your phone, great, but it's about to be surpassed by an even better version of it, coming out next month.
See, I had it, but unfortunately it was one of the casualties of the 32-bit to 64-bit exchange that happened on Apple. No. So basically, when they went to a 64-bit operating system and architecture and all that, you couldn't load 32-bit apps, and a lot of app developers updated their apps, and a lot of app developers did not. And Neuroshima Hex was one that didn't.
Is it going to come to Steam and stuff like that?
I don't know about Steam. It's just going to come to it. All the article said was it's coming to iOS and Android September, and it'll have cross-platform matchmaking between the two. So you can play whoever.
Yeah, no, Lords of Waterdeep works quite well, actually, because you can play on phones, tablets, Apples and Steam, so it's quite good. You can play, I can sit at the computer, Laura can sit on a tablet on the sofa, and you can play sort of across the net as well. So it's actually quite a good app, actually.
Is that by Playdeck, that one?
I can't remember, but it sounds familiar. Actually, speaking of apps of board games, I have recently acquired the pre-release version. So, the one with all the bugs in, of Brass Birmingham on Steam. So it's, what's the word? Early access, that's what they call it for. It's just a fancy word for beta testing. And give me your money now, Andy, and you can be a early accessor. And I've been playing that quite a lot, actually, over the last few evenings and the weekend. And I have to say, it's really good. It's £12.50, I think, currently on Steam. It might go up or down, depending on, obviously, what they add to the app. But it's very good. It's a really good implementation. It takes all of the board game artwork, because we know Brass is very, very beautiful. And it duplicates it really well. The implementation's good. The interface is good. It's not clunky, really. It slightly changes the way the income works, because you kind of track it around the board as well as VPs. It just uses a different visualization of it, but other than that, it's a very faithful copy. It's very, very good, and I strongly recommend everyone to go and buy it. It's actually weirdly done by Phalanx, which I didn't really get. Exactly, that's what I thought, because that's how I found out about it. Phalanx, as in who do U-Boot and Hannibal and all that lot. Yes, Phalanx, because that's how I found out about it, because I follow Phalanx on Twitter. I got an update from them and said, yes, we're about to release Brass Birmingham on Steam. Like, what? Hang on. No, that's Roxley. Why are you doing it? But it looks like they've partnered together to release the app for whatever reason. Then again, I guess Phalanx they've got experience of doing apps, because obviously they've done the U-Boot app for the thing. So I guess they must have some kind of...
And being board gamers, they understand what makes an interesting board game app, probably.
Yes.
So, interesting.
Tasty Minstrel Games, or TMG, are suffering virtual bankruptcy. In a state.
What the hell is virtual bankruptcy?
Well, that's just a term that they used. They sent out an email to everybody that's a kind of stock shareholder, and saying that basically their book value is in the negative, and pretty much everyone except the owner is being laid off. To the point where everyone that's backed their last Kickstarter, which was the deluxe version of Emperor's Choice, are in the process of receiving refunds. And the company doesn't look to be doing any further development of any games for the next 2 to 3 years, while they try and sell off all their gaming peripheral stock in a chance to kind of just balance the books.
Now, I saw something about this a couple of weeks ago, actually. There was rumours flying around that TMG were about to sort of circle the drain. But
to be fair, they've been circling the drain for a long time.
I think that was pretty much the gist of the thread I was reading, Steve. That no one was really entirely sure, but the feeling was that they were on a downhill trend.
Because I think that the Kickstarter you mentioned, is that 2017?
2017, and still hasn't been delivered yet.
Yeah, and I think that's not the only Kickstarter that's not been delivered. I may be wrong there.
Cool.
But you've got to wonder what went wrong there, because they were doing... one year they did, I think, 5 Kickstarters, and they were doing non-Kickstarter games as well, and they were releasing 5 or 6 games a year in a constant thread, and all their games, I'd say, good chunk of their games got highly regarded as well. And all of a sudden, they did a Kickstarter, and then just... bleh.
Dropped off a cliff.
So, it'd be fascinating to know what happened.
Yeah, because, a couple of the games you've listed here, Rory, Orlean... Eminent Domain and Village. I've heard very good things about Orleans.
Orleans, it's based in France, so it's Orleans. Yes.
Old Orleans, not New Orleans.
Actual Orleans. But yeah, no, I've really wanted to play that for a long time, actually.
That's lovely.
And Eminent Domain, I've heard really great things about that. It seems like the type of game that'd be up my street, but I don't wonder what's going to happen to them, because they're very well, high-ranked, well-regarded games. Are they going to be shipped off to other publishers? Are there going to be new editions, new artwork? It's going to be an exciting time for those.
Indeed, because I mean, I think I've only got one TMG game in my collection. That's Steamworks, which is a fairly hefty euro, actually. I've not played for a few years, but the idea is it's like a steampunk thing where you're an inventor and you make these machines. But the idea is that anyone can use your machine once you've built it. So you can stick a worker on somebody else's machine. You get a reward for having the machine, but they get to use the benefit of it. So there's a lot of player interaction in it. It's actually a pretty good game, but I've not played it for a while. But that's by TMG, I think.
Fair enough. That's the end of my mammoth news list, gents.
Yeah, so I put a couple on extra. So a few days ago, one of the staff members of Board and Dice put a kind of blog post on Board Game Geek and titled it Shipping Madness, to kind of give an idea and appreciation of what's going on with shipping at the moment. And this is all to do with the shipping of the latest Teotihuacan game, which I think is
Duke, isn't it?
Fatty's. Yeah, well, no, it's yes, it is. But they've also compared prices of some other things. They've used like the actual originally Teotihuacan as a kind of a what they call a ticket to ride box, standard box, and in 2019 the cost to ship a crate of games was $1,600. The most latest quote was $16,500.
A factor of 10.
Factor of 10.
Shit.
And the blog post actually goes into a lot of detail and basically says that in 2019 they were spending 48 cents per copy to ship it.
Mm-hmm.
They are now spending $3 per copy to ship it. So basically, that's cutting into the profit margins of a board game, basically. And then what they said, what tends to happen is you've probably heard of the 5 times multiplier kind of thing, where they buy it for $1, then they sell it to the distributor for twice that amount. Well, so that's happening at the bottom of the costing. This is because it's happening on the point where you sell it to the distributor. So that increase in cost will get multiplied when it goes from the distributor to the shop and from the shop to you. So it's either someone's going to stump up the cash and take it on the chin, or that cost is going to get passed on and go further up the chain. So
we all move to China.
Or we all move to China, yes.
The whole board game community, yeah.
Or you can do what some relatively smaller, I must admit, publishers do, and they actually have all of their manufacturing done in Europe. So A Games, for example, who do
but that has fallen apart because there was a Twitter last week on Board Game Geek highlighted that a company doing that in Europe can't get hold of any cardboard.
Yes, true. There was a rather entertaining post on that.
Yes. Meaning that it is a global supply issue. It is not the issue of shipping it from China, because you still have to ship the cardboard from somewhere else in the world. Then you have to ship those games out. Because, I mean, this whole blog post goes into a lot of detail. It's not just, you ship it to a American central hub and a European central hub, and then it has to still be shipped out to lots of places after that. So, yes, it is a complicated and messy mess at the moment.
A messy mess.
A messy mess.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And last of all, the Free League have now published the Alien Colonial Marines Operations Manual, and the reason I say that is because last session we made our squad of Marines ready to face off against the vile alien scum.
Hoorah!
And I'm dead excited.
Hell yeah.
So we'll be talking about that in a few weeks, I think.
Definitely, once we're all dead.
Once we're all dead, yeah. So basically, after your first TPK, we'll probably go, right, we can talk about it now. Very recently, all 4 of us, including Sid, who's not here today, so we can't talk about it, played a game of Ankh, the latest game from Simon and Eric Lang.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is supposed to be the 3rd in Eric Lang's area control miniature heavy trilogy, as he's called it. Which, as you know, it's Simon, so it's miniatures up the wazoo and huge, ridiculously oversized miniatures that could easily be a fraction of that size. But this one is all about ancient Egypt and basically controlling it over the ages, centuries. And you'll take the role of an Egyptian god, which is your main figurehead figure, goes on the board, and a bunch of individual troops that also go on the board. And there are obelisks, pyramids, and temples for you to control. And that's the way to get victory points. They're not called victory points, but let's keep it simple. And it's whoever has the most points at the end of the game, or whoever reaches the top of a track wins. What's quite interesting about Ankh is the rules are actually quite simple, or I think so anyway. In that all your actions you can take, I think it's 5 actions, but the actions are relatively simple, like move, they are gain a resource, which is this one like prayer power resource, you can buy an upgrade, or you can...
Get a troop down.
Other one you could do? Oh, get a troop down. So it's 4 actions, so it's move, get a troop down, gain a resource, or upgrade one of your powers. The interesting thing was these are all on this kind of other track. So every time you take one of these options, you move the track marker down. And if the track marker gets to the end of the track, then like a special phase gets activated, which generally allows you to do extra stuff, which boils down to simply gaining control of things on the board, kicking off a fight, or splitting the board up. So there's a really careful balance about what actions you take, because you might want to do something knowing that the next person's going to kick off a fight, or you might want to not do something to give like a bit more time before the fight gets kicked off, or... Well, basically, that's where the really interesting decision comes in, is what you're going to do to knock these things off. But there's also some subtleties with there, like you have to select the actions like going down the list, so you can't gain an upgrade and then move. You have to move and then gain an upgrade. And also, if you do kick off one of these special events, that's the end of your turn, so you'll only get 1 action rather than 2. As I said, you've got a massive monster of a creature on the board. That one can't be killed in a fight. But the rest of it, and all the way through the game, you'll upgrade them, and you can get other monsters, because, of course, it's a CMON game, so you have to be able to get monsters that go onto the board, which are, of course, more oversized miniatures that can go on. And you'll get bonuses for controlling them, and they will do special things. Now, there are some interesting things about the rules. The first one is that if you get to the top of the track, you've won regardless, which is quite interesting in a sense, because it means that you don't have to necessarily wait to the end of the game. If someone's a runaway leader, they have the opportunity of getting there and ending the game early. The other one, which even Mr. Lang has admitted on his Twitter account, it's a controversial rule, is that at about, was it 2/3 of the way through the game? The people in the last 2 places on the victory point track merge and become 1 player. So they basically become a team. And the idea is this is supposed to be a kind of a catch-up mechanism. I'm not entirely sure it is, but that's what it's supposed to do. And I know it sounds quite basic, but that's about it. It's all about positioning your pieces on that board really carefully to be in the right place when things kick off and having the right power. And of course, when things kick off, the combat, if you've played Blood Rage, you'll know the combat, it's very similar. You count how many miniatures you've got in a region, and you have a secret card that you play. So it's the same as, say, Game of Thrones as well, which will add a bonus on it and let you do something else. And that something else may be to cause a plague of locusts to come in and kill everyone, or it may be that you can add an extra monument or temple or pyramid onto the board, which means you've got an extra thing to score victory points. And that's when victory points are added up as well. So you get victory points for having control of the majority of each kind of monument, and then you get 1 for basically winning the fight. So each region on the board potentially can give you 4 victory points, but what you'll tend to find is there's this juggling as people get victory points just for being there and turning up, whereas other ones get there for controlling all the pyramids and sitting in the back of the corner and letting the 2 gods fight it out. Now, we've only played the 1 game of this, and I will add that as a massive caveat, because it's not a long game, but it's a table hog.
Yes.
And we are struggling, I've got to admit, I'll be perfectly honest, even post-lockdown, we are still struggling to get regular games in. We're not getting a game a week like we used to, it's more like 1 a month. So we only managed to get 1 game of this in. Now, I personally liked it, but I know some people have got criticisms of it.
Why are you looking at me, Steve?
Andy's nodding sagely.
Overall, I did enjoy it. I think it's quite a clever game, and I do like the action tracker, essentially. I think that's a very nice, clever mechanism. Now, I enjoyed that because it really does make you think about what you're going to do on your turn, and of course future turns, and take into account, well, if I do this, then Rory's probably not going to do that because he's going to kick something off, and then that has a kind of a knock-on effect all the way
I
around
really
the table.
like that.
And I thought, yeah, no, it was a really clever
No,
mechanic.
really,
but-
really good.
I think it's really good. I mean, as I said, the rules themselves are actually simple. What you can do, move some people, put some people on the board, that's it. But the order in which you do them is so brain taxing. It's like, well, if I do that, I'm not going to anything in position. But if I do that, I'm going to give Sid the chance to get a bloody territory.
And largely, you can't actually make your choice until the player before you has finished their turn. You can go, I'm going to move, and then I'm going to do that. But then if Andy does exactly those actions I'm going to do, I'm like, I can't do them now. I've got to come up with something else. And it was quite nice that you're spinning on a dime as to what you're going to do when.
But that didn't slow the game down either.
No,
Some
it didn't.
games which do that can really slow it down because you end up in like sort of analysis paralysis. But because you didn't have a lot of options,
You've only got 4, really.
Yeah, I thought it didn't slow the game down at all.
Plus, we're fairly quick players. I think there is definitely scope for AP in there, as other people would be, thinking for ages. Well, as I know, Steve and I are definitely quick gamers. We're very much play with your gut and see what happens kind of players. Strategy? We don't need no stinking strategy. But yeah, the catch-up mechanic, I was victim of it, and so were you, Steve. So we were not doing well. So the last 2 players basically merged together, and I was victim of that. I was about to kick off a fantastic strategy, but then got caught short by this bloody merge, and I completely lost essentially an entire section of the board that I'd carefully constructed with a bunch of stuff in it, made the size exactly right so I could just move 3 people in it, no one could get in there, and I'd basically just mop up points every single round without being completely challenged. I'd probably get about 4 or 5 points a round doing that, which was probably quite a lot. But then this ridiculous horse shit kicked in, and I lost the lot. And I thought, well, this is bollocks, because I've got a winning strategy.
You didn't lose it, though, Andy. You didn't lose it. You essentially
gift wrapped from me.
No, you gift wrapped it for me.
Well, yeah, okay.
Put a little bow on it.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
This little territory that everybody's been fighting over that I've carefully secured. Off you pop, and then my guys just go, oh, look, some obelisks here.
Who's left all this here? I was careless.
Everyone's on the other side of the board. Brilliant.
Yeah, I really did not like it at all.
I think it took us a little bit by surprise, because even though I said we were aware it was going to happen, I don't think we knew what position we were all being. I mean, I did poorly to begin with. I don't know what I did wrong in the first couple of turns, but I definitely didn't do something right. And so I knew I was going to be one of the people that got merged, but I think it took you by surprise, Andy, because you were in the lead, and then Rory suddenly leapfrogged past you, and it was just like, and I think I'd mentally prepared myself for it a lot more than you had. Yes, and I think that's the big difference.
I think you're probably right, because you're right. I mean, I was surging ahead for quite a lot of the first sort of quarter to third of the game. And then the whole thing sort of turned. And I was essentially playing a slightly longer term strategy, but of course the rug got pulled out from under me, and my long term strategy turned into no strategy at all, which I found rather jarring.
I will also say, I think that Eric Lang's games of this genre, I'm going to call it genre, so Blood Rage, Rising Sun, and Ankh, take a little bit of getting your head around, because they are a bit kooky in a way. Like,
what do you mean kooky?
I didn't like. Well, right. I mean, when I first played Blood Rage, I don't think Andy was there, but I played it in Worcester, and the people I played it with hated it. For the reason that the victory points in that really notch crank each round. There's like 3 rounds, and the first round you might get 5 victory points. In the last round of the game, you're getting 50, 60, 80, 100 victory points.
All right.
To the point where you feel like the first round was almost completely pointless. Because what it added to the game, your overall score, was nothing. And I think with Eric Lang's, or at least this range of Eric Lang's games, you've got to get your head in the right mindset, which takes a little bit of getting into. And I've got to admit, Blood Rage, I swung back and forth. Every time I played it, I changed my mind about it. So first time I played it, hated it. Second time, loved it. Third time, hated it. And I've kind of nestled on that. I love this game now, because I've realised all the little quirks about it, and why those quirks make it interesting. And I think Ankh will have a little bit of a problem with working out what those quirks are and whether they are something to keep or not.
Yeah.
You know, like I've already seen people online going, no, played one game with a merge mechanic, hated it, I will not be playing with that again. And it's like, well, yeah, I don't want to... It seems a bit premature, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to play it again. I really would.
I would like to play again. I really enjoyed this game. I think a lot of my enjoyment from the game came from, quite childishly, because I won.
That will not be happening again.
But so we actually had this conversation at the beginning of the game. We almost took sweepstakes on who was going to win, and I said it's not going to be me. This is the first time I'd ever played an Eric Lang game. I don't normally play this type of thing, so I was like, I'm not going to win this. I'm going to get merged. I would have bet money that I would be one of the merged players, but I just hit my stride. I think I got lucky, and then hit my stride with it. And then when Andy got taken out of the game, there was just like, yeah, I'm walking this. I think my opinion of the game would be extremely different had I been merged, because just looking at what Andy had and what you had as well, Steve, and everything just got swept off the table. And I felt that you both lost an awful lot of agency as soon as that happened, because you go down from having two actions to only having one action, and you having this conversation across the table, which obviously everybody's kind of privy to as well about what you're doing. And it's just, well,
because then you know what we're going to do. I now obviously it has carries the heavy caveat of we've only played it the one time, but I think that is a massive detriment. It's supposed to be a catch-up mechanic, but I genuinely don't think it is, because, as you say, Rory, Steve and I could not strategize without giving the entire plan away. So you and Sid would just go, well, they're going to do this, so we'll just do this to counter it. And at no point did we ever catch either of you.
We started to make some headway, but I feel it was too little too late.
Yeah. Agreed.
I mean, I did get that awesome power, which just allowed me to buy victory points every time I was in a fight.
Now, that is interesting as well. So, as you said, you upgrade your character, and everyone has the same upgrade paths. So, everyone has the option to get the same things, but you can only get 2 per rank. There's like 3 levels, and you can only get 2 upgrades per level. And all the level 3 upgrades are about getting more victory points. Mm-hmm. So, the one you got was the one where you just paid this currency for them. I think it's prayer power. But every other one allowed you to get them as well. So, you'd got a little bit ahead, and so you were able to just keep spamming this ability. But if somebody else had got that other one, they would have been able to spam them as well. And I think what that means is that game then accelerates. Once you merge, everyone needs to get a shift on, because that game is just going to ramp up in speed really quick at that point. And I think that's where the merging might not feel so bad, in that if everyone else is working correctly, you should be going damn quick by that point in the game. You're not going to be merged for much longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah, potentially. But I suppose if everyone had that power, it would just, you're not really gaining anything. So I don't know.
Well, that's what I said. There are 4 powers there. And sorry, that's what I mean. There are 4 powers there. And each power allows you to get victory points in different ways. Sure. So Rory managed to just get the one which allowed him to use the prayer power he already had. So he was using what resources he had, where some of the other ones worked differently.
That's it. I knew when... you could gauge quite easily, actually, there's a fight coming up soon, so I'm going to spend one of my actions to gain some more prayer power, maneuver my troops in such a way. So actually, I'm going to get some prayer power, and look, I've got 7 prayer power for that. Oh, we start a fight, which means I get some more. So as we kind of go into the event in the game, I've got a handful of these tokens, and it's like, I spend 2 of these every time I'm in a fight to just get a victory point, regardless of the consequence of that fight. So, and then some of them I was just walking away with the fight with all my monuments, and actually and then the card I was playing, and then go, right, and then I'll get an extra one as well, please. What I did like about that, the track was the red section, that you can actually get to a point in the game where every player that's in the red section of the victory points track is just eliminated from the game.
Just bins out, yeah.
Just that's it. So you can actually have a game where no one wins.
Yeah.
We were dangerously close to that, actually.
Well, you were really
close to that, yeah.
In fact, that was a legitimate strategy that Steve and I were trying to employ. Right, we're not going to win this, so our best bet is make everyone else lose.
Yes. Again, made some really interesting options, actually.
Yeah. I hear it is an optional rule, though, the merge. You don't have to play it.
No, I looked into it. I think it's one of the expansions. I think it's a Kickstarter expansion, includes like a super monster. And I think if you don't do the merge, then the person in last player gets the super monster.
Ah, okay. Interesting.
I think that's what it is. Don't quote me on that because I need to double check it. But no, people are treating it as an optional rule, but it is just a rule in the rule book. It doesn't say the merge rule is optional.
Okay, interesting.
I think there is an optional alternative.
Right. Okay.
So, and I think a lot of people are just ignoring it because they don't like it for the reasons you've said. But I'd need to play it a couple more times to see, to know if it's worth it. It's just like the Loki strategy in Blood Rage. Yeah. There's if one person gets all the Loki cards, they've won because they're overpowered. And at the beginning when the game came out, everyone was like, "No, remove the Loki cards from the game. They're overpowered." It's like, well, no. The thing is, once you notice somebody starts getting Loki cards, you need to make sure they don't get any bloody more.
Like when we let John get all three.
Yes, exactly that, yes.
Don't let John get the Loki cards. Damn.
What did I say?
Yeah, and John won. Yes. So, yes, I would like to play it again. It is interesting. It's very well done, very well made, and it's sort of simple but complicated at the same time, which is good. So, yes, Ankh is not wank.
Yeah.
So I was impressed with how quick the teach was, actually. I felt like it took us longer to set up the board and the pieces, and you'd already done half of it, but just get all the tokens lined up. It actually took longer to do that than for you to explain the rules.
And it's got a variable board setup in there. It's scenario based.
Okay.
So it's got various maps there for very different things. So when you say, Andy, about the merge rules, I think it might be one of the things in the setup because there's this whole book of different map layouts you can choose. I think it might be in there, but again, don't quote me on that. I think that might affect it. Now, one thing I did put pictures on Twitter, of course, of us playing it. And I should also say that because of the pre-mentioned lack of space, I do not go balls deep on Kickstarters anymore. I usually just get the base level. It's usually more than enough game for me. And I was happy with my decision that I did not get the expansions for Ankh. I've got the base game and the Kickstarter exclusives, and that's it. What's everyone said on Twitter, including Mike from Who Dares Rolls, the bastard? Oh, you really need the Ferret expansion. Makes the game pop. Chef's kiss.
What have we learned, Steve?
Nothing. We have nothing. Andy.
No. Always go balls deep. Go the Lewis Kickstarter strategy. Maximum pledge.
See, I did that with Rising Sun, and I've not touched anything in any of those Kickstarter boxes.
I still need to play that.
Yes. In fact, it would be interesting for you guys to play that and Blood Rage and do a bit more of a comparison.
We could have like an entire day of Blood Rage,
for that.
Rising Sun, and then Ankh. Like play the three in the day. It's like watching a Lord of the Rings marathon, and probably takes about the same amount of time.
Yeah, all over that.
Yes. No, we enjoyed Ankh, despite the drawback.
So that was Ankh from Simon. Andy, tell us about Tinner's Trail.
Well, you know I like a good dry, boring Euro.
We do indeed.
Yes. Well, this is not a dry, boring Euro. Well, not entirely a dry, boring Euro. Tinner's Trail is from Alley Cat Games, so our friend Cesar, and they do Dice Hospital. They're doing Dice Theme Park, and they've done a few others, what we have played as well in the past, and I think one of their upcoming games is going to be Eternal Palace, which Steve and I have covered before. But Tinner's Trail is a remake of the 2008, I think it is, game of the same name, originally by Martin Wallace, still by Martin Wallace. So what they've done is a spit and a modern polish of I would say an old classic, but I've never heard of it, so it's not that classic.
Has it been titivated in the modern style?
It has been titivated in the modern style, yes. The game is set in Cornwall in the late 19th century. I think it was 18th century. Sometime in days of yore.
This proper
Poldark.
Mr. Poldark, come quick, there's trouble down mine.
That's the one. It's proper Poldark country sort of territory.
Right.
I mean, there's a bloke on the front of the box holding a Cornish pasty, waving it at his family. So it's proper in. And the idea is that basically you are, I would say, an entrepreneur or someone with a bit of cash. And you've got a map of Cornwall and a little bit of Devon. And the idea is that you are bidding on territories that contain copper and tin. And then you build a mine on that area, and you will gain an unknown, potentially unknown quantity of these resources, at which point you have to basically pull them out of the ground, sell them on, and then essentially at the end of each round buy victory points. Now, as the game goes on, the victory points, the price for victory points essentially goes up. So, i.e., you get fewer victory points for your money. And at the end of each round, the first person to sort of pass out of each round will get the better deal. So you pay less money for more points, as it were, and you each get 10 essentially action points during each round. There's 4 rounds, so it's actually over fairly quickly. You can get it done through in about an hour and a half. So it's not a really heavy game. And whenever you bid on one of these areas, there's a little tile that'll tell that has the amount of copper and tin on it, and also an amount of water. Water is obviously bad because it makes pulling things out of the ground very hard because it's inconvenient. So you don't want any water and you want lots of resources. Of course, it never happens that way. But there are various things you can buy during the rounds, like steam pumps, trains, adits, which are basically tunnels that they used to dig out towards the coast. So basically the water would literally drain through this tunnel and just sort of piss out into the sea. So that basically removes water from 2 connecting areas that you build on, and also can give you access to more resources. So apparently, and this is one of the good things I like about Martin Wallace games, he does the same in Brass, is that he actually explains some of the history behind it and why they've added that as a game mechanic. So he said an adit, basically it's a tunnel, but infrequently in digging these things, they actually found more mineral deposits, which is why you get a tin and a copper on top of each of the mines. It's very, very clever.
That's quite good.
But each of these, it is good. But and then you can build a port which allows you to get rid of some water, but also gives you extra mining capabilities. So you can pull things out faster. So the more water you have in an area, the more expensive it is basically to pull this stuff out. So, and every time you mine, you add more water. So yada yada. And then you will then, in bidding on a mine, you get a little tile, and most of these tiles are face down. And you've got a limited hand of cards for the game, and you can play, there's 1 card for essentially each of the areas on the board, so A to D, depending on how many players there are. And that allows you to have a look at, so essentially prospecting, you can have a look at the tile you can look at, so you have an advantage when it comes to the bidding. So you know what's there, everybody else doesn't. So you can be an absolute bastard, so set the bidding really high. So it's a great mine, and then just go, I'm out, bye. And there's like 1 piece of copper and a shitload of water in there, and someone's just bought basically a puddle. And of course, you can play. The bidding is actually a really interesting part of the game. You know, you can play antagonistically. You know, everyone can go cheap, and then you suddenly go right 20 or 10 or whatever it is, and everyone goes, holy shit. And then there's a really big decision that you got to make. It's like, are they bluffing? Is it really good? And then, of course, some of all these cards that you play can actually enhance the mine that you put there. So it'll either add more resources or take some water out automatically before you start, or it can give you an extra miner, which will allow you to mine more resources. So all of these things add up. It is obviously very competitive. There's no cooperative in it at all. And this goes through for 4 rounds. And then at the end of the game, you know, you basically spunk all your money on buying victory points. And that's basically it. It's a really quite straightforward game. So the idea is you basically just bid on mines, build or acquire resources to try and help you things, pull this stuff out of the ground and sell it. Repeat 4 times, done. Really, really straightforward. And it's really, really good. So I've played it now 3, 4 times with 2, 3 and 4 players. So it does scale, and scales very well. It's a bit less good with 2, because I think any sort of bidding with 2 players is a bit mince, because you kind of need the 3rd or 4th, you know, antagonist basically to make it a bit more interesting. But to be honest, it works okay because the cards got to double up and give you a sort of minimum bid. So they have varying amounts on these cards. You sort of draw one at random, and you could go anywhere from 1 to 5 quid, even if it's a complete dud. So you pay 5 quid for this mine. You're like, so there is this wonderful sort of, not quite random element to it, but a sort of chaotic element to the game. So it's very, very, very good. And I really enjoy it. So I'm very glad that I've got a copy of it. And we've played it quite a lot. We both really enjoy it, Laura and I. And I've played it with our sort of local game group as well. And they really enjoyed it too. And because it's by Martin Wallace, there are... I'm not going to say it's not the same as Brass in any way, shape or form. It's nowhere near as complicated, and the mechanics are very, very different, but it feels like a Martin Wallace game. You know, it's familiar. You know, it uses the track around the edge to sort of double up as money and points, but there's just a couple of things about the game you think, yeah, I'm playing a Martin Wallace game here. but it's not overpowering. But it's very, very good, and I really strongly recommend it. I think you'd both like it, actually.
How long does it take to play?
About an hour and a half, give or
Because
take.
we were considering playing that on that Sunday that we got together, didn't we?
Yes,
You
yes,
did bring it along.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought it just on sort of the off chance, but obviously we didn't get time. But it's not a long game. I mean, we played on the Thursday night, and I think with the teach, it took us 2 hours.
So it is quicker than brass, because brass can go long, can't it? I think the last time we played brass, it was easily 3 hours.
It can be, yeah. I mean, I've got a lot quicker at brass now, especially with the app. I can get through a game of brass in about 20 minutes. But
That's because it takes all the faff out.
exactly, you just skip to my turn, skip to my turn, skip to my turn. All of a sudden, I've conquered Birmingham. Not that you'd want to conquer Birmingham, but anyway. But yeah, no, Tinner's Trail is much lighter than Birmingham. So I reckon the three of us could probably get through Tinner's Trail in less than an hour, if I'm honest. It would take about 5 minutes to teach the rules, and then you just play the game.
Really?
It's done. Yeah, it's not heavy at all. It's just it's about the same weight as something like Dice Hospital. So it's the kind of alley cat weight of games.
Yeah.
It's fairly consistent. None of their games are particularly heavy, but they're not light either. So they do hit that sort of nice sweet spot, and I think they've done
I would like to
really
play
great
more
job.
Martin Wallace games. I've only ever played Studying Emerald, and I didn't get on. I didn't get on with it. I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan, so that was one of the first games I bought when I got into board gaming. And
that would have been a kick in the balls, wouldn't it?
You know
Is
what,
it heavy?
Steve? It was a kick in the balls. It's not heavy, but I didn't get on with it. It has this.
See, Andy, right. Here's the analogy that Andy will get, right? Martin, Studying Emerald is Martin Wallace's Android.
Ah, right, got you.
It's about 15 different games chucked into a bucket, boiled up, and thrown at the wall to see what would stick.
Yeah, definitely Android. Yep.
There's a lot of stuff going on in there, and it has this really interesting kind of. It's not hidden. It's just like hidden teams.
Yeah, it's hidden teams, but you quickly work out who's on what team anyway.
And it kind of
making it almost pointless.
Makes it almost pointless, and it is. I think you've got to really know what you're doing to playing these teams to be able to play the game. So you've got to play the game once to work out how to play it to be able to play it. Just reading the rules isn't enough. You've got to play it to learn to play it.
Yeah. I understand.
And I think at that point in my gaming life, I was playing with lots of different people all the time. I wasn't playing consistently with the same group. So it was like, play this game. It's Neil Gaiman. It's going to be brilliant. And then they go. It was a game. It was a way to spend an hour and a half. And then you play it with a different group of people. And I know how to play now, but they still don't know how to play. And I didn't know then. I don't even think I could do it now. Explain how to do it. But apparently, first edition Studying Emerald is better than second edition, from what I read.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah, but
so I played first edition because I played it not long after it came out, and it's one of those games where there's mechanics for things that might not even turn up.
Yeah.
So there are vampires and zombies in it, and you might not have either vampires or zombies turn up in your game. But if they do, it changes. It's a whole raft of new rules you've got to get your head around. It really is bonkers. I mean, I wanted to love it, but it was hard. I only played it once. It was hard to kind of latch on and go, yeah, this is good or bad, because you were just kind of like bewildered.
The theme, Andy, you'd love the theme. It's Sherlock Holmes meets Cthulhu.
Perfect.
It's
Lovecraft.
It's based on this short story Studying Emerald, which is Sherlock Holmes investigating a Cthulhu murder.
Study. I know that Sherlock Holmes is a study in Scarlet, but okay.
Yes,
that's what. Yes, so it's Neil Gaiman.
It's Neil Gaiman doing a study in Emerald, so it's all about Sherlock Holmes. There's been a murder, like the old ones rule, and it's the son or daughter of whoever is essentially the Queen of England at the time is murdered, and Sherlock has to go and solve the crime. But it's all Cthulhu based. But
it's a really interesting short story because it's also based on it assumes that Cthulhu has already risen and is ruling the world as well.
Oh,
Cthulhu's
nice, okay.
in power.
I'm not familiar with Neil Gaiman, I'm afraid. So
get on it, mate. It's brilliant.
Okay, interesting. You've said you're not playing much Martin Wallace. I've actually become a bit of a fan of his games. So has Laura. So I really like them actually. And another one I've got, and I kind of got this not accidentally, but because it was super cheap on an Amazon sale, was London.
Yeah, London often turns up for under a tenner, doesn't it? On Amazon?
It's really good. Genuinely a really good game. It's all pretty much 100% cards, and the idea is that you are some rich person in London, and there are sort of three, I'm going to say phases to the game, but there are three decks of cards basically, but they're all sort of piled up in one deck, and you go through A to B to C, and C becomes sort of most powerful. And the idea is you're basically building buildings and estates and things to get points, and it's all on the backs of the poor. So the more stuff you do, the more poverty you generate, and everyone will get poverty. But having poverty itself is not bad as long as you have less poverty than at least one other person, because at the end of the game, the person with the most poverty, the person with the least poverty loses all of their poverty. Everybody else loses the same amount, and obviously the person with the most poverty left over loses a particular number of points. So it all works like that, but it's literally just play it's typical Martin Wallace. On your turn you'll be playing two cards and doing two things, and then you kind of build these little decks of out in front of you. The more decks you have, the more stuff you can do, but the more poverty you'll generate. So there's lovely little balance about how to play the game. And in the last sort of phase of the game, you can't get any more resources because the card C's won't actually give you any money. So you've got to build your resources to start with and then spend them wisely towards the end of the game. It's really, really clever. Really simple to play, but really, really clever. And I strongly advise you, if you've not played a Martin Wallace game, I think you will enjoy London, because it is literally, it's only like an A5 box. It's not huge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's not a massive game. It doesn't take up a huge amount of space either, and it is super cheap. So
I shall have a look. I've really wanted to get my hands on Via Nebula for a while. Since that came out, it looked and sounded quite interesting. And to be honest, it looked and sounded like the type of game that I'd probably convince Kira to play. So it's like, that means I'd actually be able to play a board game should the children ever go to sleep. And and then what's the other one? Rocket Man that we saw at the expo. I thought that sounded quite good as well.
that's really good. That is really good. It doesn't feel like a Martin Wallace game, though, oddly. It is him, but it doesn't feel like one. It's very, very different. I mean, you are still messing around with a hand of cards, but you're not playing them to do things. You're kind of stacking them all together and then spunking them in one go. But then there's a push-your-luck element as actually when you actually launch a mission into space, you draw from a different deck and you might make it or not.
Yeah.
But it's definitely worth getting. Laura and I really enjoyed it when we played at Expo. It's a really good game. And you can get through in about an hour. It's not long.
Nice.
It's only 30 quid.
So, I need to move on because I think the review of Tinner's Trail has kind of gone by the wayside of the trail.
I don't think so. I mean, there wasn't really a huge amount to say.
Polyhedron Collider down
good.
rabbit hole. Are you sure?
Sinkhole.
I think I've said all I needed to say. It's a good game. I really enjoyed it. Strongly advised.
Come on quick, Mr. Poldark. Polyhedron Collider, gone down a rabbit hole.
I'm off to Cornwall next week. I almost wish I had a copy to take with me.
There you go.
So, we also played on our day of games, Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Core.
We played it twice.
We played it twice. In fact, we played the same mission twice because we did that badly.
Every meal's a banquet. Every
No.
formation a parade. I love the core.
The first time we played
mission of failure.
The first time we played it, I would argue we did better the first time round than we did the second time round. Even though we got
definitely
key rules wrong, which made it the game 3 times more difficult, we still did better the first time round.
You know what? We still got some of those rules wrong the second time around because I played it a third time when I got home and actually completed the mission with absolutely no problems at all.
Oh, really?
So I was hoping to play this again and actually didn't. So yeah, the Aliens Another Glorious Day in the Core is like a miniature, I'm going to say it's a dungeon crawler, but it's like that kind of game. It's a miniature board mission scenario based kind of run and gun kind of game. So if you've played something like Space Hulk, Space Crusade, Hero Quest, Descent, that kind of miniature thing, you've got a grid, you can move so many spaces, you roll some dice to shoot your M14A pulse rifle, and if you're lucky, you kill an alien. If you don't, a giant 6-foot-tall penis monster tears you limb from limb. I've just made Rory choke on his donuts.
Good Lord.
So it's based on the movie Aliens, the 1984 classic, which, as I was discussing with my wife this morning, might actually be my favourite film ever. So I'm all on board for this. And it's one of those games as well that uses stills from the movie for all its artwork. So it's got that, sometimes that can look tacky. In this, I don't think it looks too bad. And you've also got miniatures for all the main crew. So in the base game, you get Hicks, Gorman, Vasquez, Newt, Ripley, and Frost. That's it. So it gives you this nice little squad, and then there are expansions aplenty which you can expand upon that, and even get the Queen Alien and the loader in there,
which I am yet to paint.
Well, it's yellow, so good luck.
Actually, it's not too bad. I have discovered how to paint yellow recently. It looks all right.
I wait to see what it's going to turn out.
I'm going to make a horse's arse of it, I'm sure.
Let's just say the last time I tried to paint a miniature yellow, it nearly got thrown out the window. So yeah, the gameplay wise, there's nothing about this which is particularly revolutionary. The main thing which I think is different is the game runs on a deck of cards. So though you've got actions to do things, you can spend cards to almost take extra actions. So like, for instance, if you want to shoot your pulse rifle, you can shoot so many times by burning this deck of cards. And then every so often you can rest to put the cards back into the deck, which gives you longer. So if you run out of cards, you ran the game out, basically. And it gives you this kind of ticking away resource. The other thing is it's all scenario based, and all the scenarios you've got special rules. So the first mission, which is the one we played on that day and played it twice and failed both times, was the mission where you've got to rescue Newt. So basically you've got to send a character, find Newt, roll the dice to try and calm her down, and then get her out of the exit as soon as possible before you get completely overrun by aliens. We failed because we didn't calm her down, which means we couldn't escape with her, which means we got completely overrun by aliens.
Yes, they all died horribly.
I think at one point we only had like 4 alien miniatures left in the box.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, this is a miniature-based game which you have to assemble the miniatures, which is something I haven't had to do in a board game in about 15 years. And at first, it was kind of fun. Cutting off sprues, gluing their arms on, until I started trying to glue those alien tails. And I'm not kidding, they nearly got thrown out the window as well.
I did warn you.
You did,
when I bought this, because I bought it at Expo, and the guy I bought it off said, "I've got a piece of advice for you. Take your time with the tails." So I passed on this nugget of information to Mr. Tudor. Clearly, Mr. Tudor did not take said advice.
Well, I forgot I was using plastic polystyrene cement rather than superglue, because the other piece of advice I'd heard was to use polystyrene cement on it rather than superglue on this plastic. So I forgot that polystyrene cement takes a little bit to dry. So what would happen is I'd plonk it and I'd go, "Yeah, that's holding."
Clonk.
Put it down, look away, do something, come back, and the tail's gone plump.
Yes, no, I found just sort of put a blob on, wait about 5 minutes for it to start to get tacky, and then stick it together and hold it, and then it's okay. But yes, 16 of those was enough to drive anyone mad. But as a game, it was kind of exactly what we expected it, really.
I think I've got the best word for this, for me. I think the game is compelling.
Yes.
We lost. I didn't enjoy the game, but I was compelled to play it again. And even though I also didn't enjoy the second game, I feel compelled to play it again. Because I just want to just complete the mission and just to go, right, that's how it's done. I think I could quite happily just go, right, we'll play it and we'll play it and we'll play it until we win this scenario, and then it's going in the bin because I don't want it. I just want to prove to myself that it can be done. And then
there's
happy.
A bunch of other scenarios as well. Like the next one you go is
that one's enough.
I think it's basically set where folk are in the APC, and I think you have to go and rescue a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's after the attack at the bottom of the reactor, isn't it? So it's like you've got the APC at one end of the board, with like Ripley and Gorman, and you've got everyone else the other end of the board.
Yes.
So
yeah, sort of get them all the way back, and of course there's no way there's no direct route, so they've got to go all the way through this little maze that's sort of already populated with aliens and eggs and crates and things, and get them back. And then the last one is set. I think it's aboard the actual Solari, isn't it? Sulaco, that's the one. I think. Although is that Get Away From Her, You Bitch, which is the expansion.
I think that's the expansion.
Yes, that's definitely there because you get the power loader and the Queen, which is an interesting model in itself. If anyone does want to get Away From Her, You Bitch, in which you do get the Queen and they start to assemble it, get yourself some plastic putty or green stuff because that model is shit and doesn't fit together properly. Really? There's massive great holes in. So I just basically have to squirt a load of this putty in to seal these gaps. Otherwise it looks a bit ropey. But the power loader goes together really well. That looks really cool. But as a game, I think the interesting bit is this sort of deck, this sort of shared ammo deck, essentially. But unfortunately, most of the stuff in the scanner deck, which is essentially something, it's basically the bad shit that happens. It's the Mythos Cup, isn't it, from Arkham Horror, basically. Everyone turns one of these little scanner cards over, and handily on the back of the scanner cards is either not many blobs, quite a few blobs, or an absolute shitload of blobs, which gives you an indication of how terrible the card is.
Yeah, I felt like this game, it kicked you in the nuts, and then it kicked you in the nuts again, and then in the next turn it kicked you in the nuts, and it felt like there was just there was just no relief, and you kind of go, right, okay, we've generated all these bloody penis aliens all over the board, right? First things first, let's try and calm Newt down. I failed. She runs away. Well, brilliant. Now I've just been kicked in the nuts by an 8-year-old girl.
Do you know what we did wrong?
Affirmative.
Because, as I say, I played it on my own afterwards, and I kind of simulated a 3-player game, I think it was. So I had Vasquez, Ripley, and I think it was Hicks. It was Hicks or Hudson, I forget which one. But the way I managed to do it was, I basically used the barricades to great effect, because that really slowed the aliens down. So barricade all their entry points, barricade all the doors I didn't need. It just slows them down.
How did you get that done so quickly?
Because I'm very, very good, Rory.
Well, I think because we tried that when we played. It was like run up to the alien entry point and try and barricade it, and it's just roll a dice, and it's just like...
That's because you kept rolling a 9.
There is that. I had tremendous luck. Couldn't roll anything below a 9 on a 10-sided dice for 2 hours.
I have to admit, some of my rolls were pretty jammy. Like, I needed, like, there's a bloody great blob coming out of the, or 3 blobs coming out of the vent, and I rolled sort of 3 3s on a d6, so basically they didn't break the barricade. So things like that did work in my favour. And a couple of the blob cards I got were actually false alarm, so I kind of got away with a few things, and I got a bit lucky, whereas I think in our game, we got really unlucky with some of the dice rolls. So obviously...
We did have a lot of bad dice rolls. Yeah. In 2 separate games as well. It wasn't just the one game, because no one could roll that dice to calm down Newt.
I think just to point this out, whilst we were playing the second game, I actually protested and told Steve to go get new dice, because I refused to roll the same 10-sided dice anymore. I was just like, no, Steve, we need new ones.
But we didn't... Strategically, we didn't make use of the rest mechanic as well as we should have done, which is basically just recycle stuff from the dirt from the spent deck,
which
and
I
put
have
it back
to say
in the regular deck.
Is a really cool mechanic. If we were to play this, if you were to somehow convince me to play this, all the scenarios, but that's it. The cards that get they circle through, don't they? They go from your deck to the discard pile, and then they go to the trash pile. And if they go into the trash pile, you don't get those cards in subsequent scenarios?
You get some of them.
You get some of them, but you can permanently lose cards from your game from game 1, scenario 1, which I think is really interesting, because you are forced into this. I mean, it's a bad news game, this, isn't it? You know you're up against it.
Yes, but I mean, at the end of my sort of, I say, solo game, simulated 3-player, I only actually lost for the next mission. I'm only down 4 cards, so it's not too bad.
Right,
but
okay.
the I think the way I managed to win is basically barricade as much as you can and slow them down as much as you can, because you just get overwhelmed, as we did. But also shoot the bastards, to quote Bricktop, because the more aliens you kill, the fewer things they can do to you. So you skimp through the alien turn really quickly, because I think we did a few things where blobs sort of appeared and then moved. But if you actually go through the turn order...
No, we did it
right. Okay, but anyway, so
there was a lot of cards we got turned up that said the blob appears and then moves.
Yeah.
So what would happen is we'd end up with a blip and an alien right next to someone, which meant then they were screwed. Even though the aliens didn't attack, it means they couldn't do much because the aliens have like an attack of opportunity as well, or something like that. So yeah, we did play it in the right order.
I don't think they attack though when they get next to you. If it's a blob, it's only if the aliens do that. So blobs just sort of walk forward and stand there menacingly. But anyway,
I'm pretty sure we played that bit right.
I think
We just ended up with a lot of bad cards.
because we didn't kill them essentially, but we were unlucky. But yeah, you just thin out their numbers as it were, and because they can do less to you, it's not quite so bad. It's a bit more manageable. But again, I got quite lucky with some of my attack rolls. So basically, I parked Vasquez essentially at the entrance so she could see 2 of the 3 corridors. She just mowed everything down. It was brilliant, and then just used the grunts to recycle a card so she gets her ammo back, and then just sort of repeat ad infinitum. I nearly lost Ripley really near the end. So basically, she was almost at the exit, but then this massive, great swarm of aliens just plopped down in front of her out of a vent that just appeared. But she killed 6 of them in a single salvo of guns. I know, it's ridiculous. I got really lucky, but yeah, I think because it's obviously so based on dice, then the game is really swingy, as we saw. You can do really, really well or really, really badly. But
because in our first game, I think my character, Frost, was able to calm Newt down, and we got Newt on side by the end of turn 2.
Yes.
But in our subsequent game, we could never calm Newt down.
No, she ran away.
She just kept running. So we were coming up with all these brilliantly wonderful, convoluted plans of how to kind of, almost just shepherd her towards the exit without actually coming into contact with her. And I'd be really keen to see how those would work.
Well, the way I did it was basically, you get the 4 static blobs at the start, and you don't know which one of them is new. You basically got to search them all.
Yeah.
Instead of going up to the computer, we tried that twice, and it still didn't work. So basically, all I did was open the door and shoot them.
The worst case, it's only going to be 4 aliens, isn't it?
Precisely. So it wasn't actually too bad. And yeah, she ended up being like one of the furthest ones away, but I still got her out. So it is definitely possible. You just need a bit of luck. There's no denying it. But it isn't as hard as we made it.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I was actually feeling a little bit guilty when I drove home of going, was I a complete sulky tosser? Because my dice rolls were so abysmally high. All game, I was finding myself getting really frustrated. The fact that I felt like I couldn't accomplish anything in my turn, and I also felt, to a degree, and I think I expressed this on the day, that I didn't actually feel there was a lot of agency. In my turn, my choices are shoot that alien or shoot that alien, and I didn't really feel like there wasn't really much for me to actually deliberate on. There wasn't really much for me to contribute in terms of this cooperative game. Let's do this. As you know, it's my turn. I've just got to shoot this alien. And I think I was a bit disappointed like that. Some of the co-op games, even when we played Burgle Brothers a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago now, it's like, let's go up here, I'll go to this room, and you can do that. We had more conversation, more things going on in my turn than I did in Alien.
Yeah,
but
okay.
Still, though, I do really want to play it again. Maybe not the first game we play when I come round again.
Warm you up to it.
Yeah, maybe this is the game you play after lunch. We have lunch, we have a cake, and then go, right, now we're going to play Alien while everybody's on that kind of sugar high.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah, okay. Right.
I do think it is very much leave your brain at the door kind of game. It's you can't go in with any expectations.
Yeah.
It's really just sort of have a quick blast, fun game. You're probably going to die, but you never know.
Yeah, I think maybe that's it. Maybe I just went in with the wrong attitude to this of going, we're going to win. We are 4 really intelligent men playing a cooperative game. We are going to win this thing.
You haven't played Pandemic with us, have you, Rory? with Epidemic Tudor over it. If there's a bad card in the deck, Steve will draw it.
I will indeed.
But that is Aliens, Another Glorious Day in the Court from Gale Force 9.
We haven't got any questions this week, and we had some random feedback. Okay, so this is more of a feedback than a questions section. It's a round off our little podcast. So first is one from a chap called Simon Curtis. He says, "Morning lads, and thanks for the great podcasts." You're welcome, Simon. For some reason, I'm getting podcasts from last year, but that's not a problem. I was listening to one about your best and worst moments in RPG campaigns, and I had to share the one where I was playing Zobla. I assume it's pronounced like that. He's a goblin in a loincloth. Only our gnome player keeps stealing the loincloth, so I managed to gain the head of one of my defeated enemies and was using that as a kind of sporran. We encountered a new foe, and so rather than using the weapons I had available to me, I decided to use the head instead. The GM, head in hands, accepted this, and happily rolled high to bludgeon this man to death with my skulls cum sporran. Thought you'd enjoy that image.
I do applaud the inventiveness.
Yeah, that's good.
What I'm trying to work out is, did he pick up the sporran and use it as a bludgeoning object, or was it all in the hip thrust?
Oh! Oof. I think it's best not to know.
If that scarred your mind, we have a lengthy email from Phil the Sheep.
Single mighty swing from his Todger of Doom.
I'm regretting all those donuts now before you read this story.
Okay, so Phil says that he heard Andy mention that he saw lions shagging in Africa.
I did.
So he thought he would share his pain and add a few interesting facts about related things that apparently his girlfriend inflicts upon him over dinner. When you see lions finish copulating, you'll see the female swipe at the male. This is because cats have barbs on the end of the old chap to stimulate the female into ovulation when he pulls out. And this then obviously hurts on withdrawal. Nugget number 1. Nugget number 2. Male kangaroos have bifurcated penis, and the female has 3 vaginas. 2 to house each half of the male's knob, and a third one in the middle to give birth through.
How does this evolve? That's the question. Where in nature was this useful? Because isn't the idea of evolution, you know, that you kind of random stuff happens and the good stuff hangs around? At what point was this decided this would be good?
It did happen in Australia, Andy.
That is very true. Where, you know, spiders will eat you.
Yes.
Yes. And I got the last one from Phil here. This is little nugget number 3. Rhinos have knob flaps that unfurl when they're going away at it so they can stop mid-coitus, which can usually last a few hours, and have a snack without the old chap falling out.
See, what?
That brings a whole new meaning to the term Netflix and chill, doesn't it?
What really...
Netflix and chill that Lord of the Rings marathon we were just talking about earlier.
What really upsets me here is the fact that Phil's girlfriend talks about this during their dinner together. It's like, I want to know, right? Is this when Phil the sheep has done something to piss her off, and this is her way of getting back at him while he's having his chicken chow mein, or is this kind of just general table banter?
Knowing Phil the sheep, I reckon the latter.
I feel really glad that around my dinner table we normally just play 20 questions with the kids to try and guess, you know, renipede or rhinoceros instead of this shite.
Bifurcated penis.
Bifurcated penis, that's the one. Yeah. Oh, Phil,
Question
Phil,
1. Is your penis sewn in half?
Oh, just wince then.
Good grief.
Those donuts haven't made a reappearance yet, so we're all right.
For now.
How many donuts do you have left, by the way? Have you troughed a lot of them?
The donuts? I have 2 left.
2 left? It's troughed 3 donuts. You animal.
No, it was...
I'm gonna do a 5-mile cycle after this podcast. I'll have you know. I'm gonna burn off at least half of that donut.
And a 10-minute vomiting session, I would have thought. Oh, good grief.
Anyway, I think that's it for tonight.
I think we should definitely draw a veil over this podcast now.
Thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed this, please give us a review on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. If you'd like to chat to us, we're available at Polyhedron C on Twitter, and we're on Facebook and Board Game Guild. I always can never get this out. Board Game Geek Guild 2726.
Well done. And at some point, you remember 2 podcasts ago when we said we'd have a podcast out before I published my review of Tainted Grail? Yep, it's true. I still haven't published it.
Have we had 2 podcasts out since that?
We did the 100, and we did. I did the 101, the expo sort of debrief. So yes,
and we've done 102 since then.
And
as well.
102, which we actually did before 101. But anyway, so yes,
They don't know that.
well they do now. Our efficiency, our unknown efficiency, actually caught up with us. Recorded a podcast and thought, shit, we need to do expo. Damn.
Well, until next time, tatty bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.